Okay. We're live.
There we go. Hello, welcome everyone. I see all our attendees join. Welcome to the Servoy product update. I see many more attendees joining. Let's give them a second. Today's Servoy webinar product update. You probably have been expecting this one. 2025.3 release. We have a lot of demos today. We have a lot of speakers today. We have Sean with us. We have Renee with us. We have Ron here for questions. Come on in. We have, yes, I see everyone coming. Welcome. Let's see, we have a lot of demos, but first we have a poll. I think Sean can start that one right now. We want to have you answer 2 questions just for our information. Also, can you start them? Maybe Ron has to do it.
I think Ron has to. Ron's the meeting host. He's the big cheese.
I just changed you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there it is. Okay.
Okay, good. If you could please fill in those 2 questions, that would be nice.
Test.
Information.
A lot of questions.
A lot of questions.
Just a couple. Yeah.
We have, like I said, a lot of demos today, but you can ask a lot of questions. I'm not sure if we have time to answer all the questions, but just send them in and we'll see if we can interrupt Sean. Yeah, go ahead, Sean. Maybe you can start right away.
Yeah, so we like to always demo first and then kind of give an overview at the end of the whole product update and release notes. There is a lot, so I hope you did your morning yoga or had a second cup of coffee or a nap or whatever you need. I will go as fast as I can to keep this within an hour. But I'm joined also by my colleague Renee, and he can talk fast as well. So we're going to do this. The first demo, we're going to just kind of check the state of AI and developer productivity. And we'll do that with Renee. He's the architect of Servoy Cloud, so he writes a lot of code. So he has a lot of practice trying to squeeze more out of every minute of his day. So he's the guy to give us an update on how he's using AI in Servoy Developer. This product update is nice because it's really like a developer's developer update. There's new APIs and some kind of technical things. The last one was a big cloud update. This one would go into Servoy Developer, show some new tricks and APIs. We got the events manager, the new menu editor, which is kind of a follow-up from the last update. And we're always improving our support for ECMA. We used to be ES6 only, and now we go into the future, adding more and more support. And then we'll also recap what's new in Servoy Cloud. So starting off, Renee, I will stop sharing and we'll kick it over to you. Renee is going to show us Copilot in Servoy Developer, also the built-in Servoy AI plugin, and we'll just get kind of an overview of what's new and what's changing. So stop sharing.
Let me share my screen.
And please keep sending questions. We want to interrupt Renee and Sean as much as possible as time allows us.
You can see my screen, then please let me know.
Yep.
So yes, there are multiple ways of doing AI. I think what is mainly interesting for what I use daily is the Copilot integration. What you can add to Eclipse, what is the Servoy. Mainly what you need to do to install this one is to go to help and then Eclipse Marketplace. And then it loads, that needs some time. And then search for Copilot.
I don't think we can see your pop-up on the screen there, Renee.
Yeah, we just see the ID.
Let me then reshare that one. Where is it? And I add more screens. There. Yes.
Yes.
Correct. You should now see the full screen. Where is my pop-up?
Yeah.
So if you go to Eclipse Marketplace, but you can find under Help and then Eclipse Marketplace, that will load. And if you search for this one for Copilot, then it will load the matching thing. Then you have two hits. One is important that you have the GitHub Copilot 0.5.0. That is the wrong one. GitHub is working on its own version, but until now I have a lot of issues with that one, so it doesn't work fully for me yet. So I use the Copilot for Eclipse. And when that one is installed, you get on the bottom right corner, you get a small, robot icon. And there, the first time you need to log in, I'm already logged in, and it will be linked to your GitHub account. As a trial, GitHub offers a free version, what is limited to X amount of requests. And after that one, it is a paid service of GitHub itself. But it offers you all sort of nice things. It is based on your local workspace, and of course, all the knowledge what GitHub has about JavaScript and all the other things. But it offers things like if I now type in functions, you already get how do you say it? Prompt that says, hey, probably you want to type a function. What is get artifact s3 path by path, and that is based on the previous method. What it has, this is what it has, and also the next method, and it will give you a sample of, hey, this is what I use. The nice thing is because of Copilot, it knows your workspace. So it also knows a lot of Servoy logic because it is within your workspace. So it knows Database Manager, it knows Query Builder and all the other things if you use it before somewhere else in your application. So that is what I use a lot for that one. But if I do, for example, application.output, you see already that it knows like, hey, probably it should be application.output. And then it gives you a sample of the text, what it already knows. Now, GitHub doesn't really know Servoy, but it knows it because in my workspace, I have more applications.output there. So that makes it, for me, easy to do because most of the time it is it guesses sometimes correctly what I want. Sometimes, although it is partly correct, it saves me time because if it already says, hey, probably you want an if statement, and if I need to change 2 or 3 words, or if I continue typing, then most of the times it gets closer to the correct response what I want, and then you can read faster than you can type, or at least I can do. So that saves me a lot of time. But then this part is nice, but it doesn't know a full logic of the Servoy application itself. So the scope calls and all the other things. That's why we also have Servoy AI itself. So if I select this function and I do right click on it, I don't know, it's already there for some time, but there isn't a thing that's called Servoy. It is AI, and here you can do explain section, debug, and add inline to the comments. And this one knows more about the context of Servoy, because when we do this, we construct a whole prompt, what adds more context about the scopes methods, what are linked to, how the parameters are working, what utils is, what database manager is. It knows more of the context of Servoy. So if I do explain selection, then it takes some time. So it generates a prompt and then it sends it to is it the AI? And I hope that my browser still works. It's always when you start demoing something, then
Typical demo.
it's typical demo.
And maybe you can answer a question in the meantime.
Yeah.
A question that always comes in when it's about AI: is your code still private? Is it training on your code, or?
For Copilot, you have if you are enterprise, it is still private, so it is not training on your code. If you use your private GitHub account, by default it is, but you can opt out. So that's really a thing what you can do. You can log in and they just use a checkbox like, hey, it's not allowed to train on my code. So then it is still private.
You have to do that in the GitHub setting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So this one from the selected text, I did explain explain the selection, and then it shows you the explanation of what it does here. So it says, hey, this has it has different parameters. It returns something. It goes into a different call, and this one knows more about the context of where you currently are. So that's a little bit better, and it knows more than what Copilot is. Although code completion of that one is really nice. So that's mainly what I use for the AI part. And you can also try other things, because if I do, for example, add inline comments, then it sends a new request, and that will just generate will return a new function with a nice description of the function itself, what it does, and then it add inline comments like, hey, this is what it does. Of course, this AI driven, so at least it gives you a sample of things what it can do. That's mainly how I use AI most of the times. Keep in mind, if you use Copilot, for sure it will guess wrong at sometimes, because it doesn't know DBI files and all the other things. What the Servoy AI knows, because that will send just all those information.
Renee, can you talk about how long you've been using Copilot and how it's changed since you started using it?
Copilot right now, it is now, I think, a little bit more than a year. And in the beginning, it was the answers are getting, or the guesses what it does is gets better over time. Sometimes you're sort of surprised what it gives you as an option, or if you start typing functions, or you want to refactor something, and you start refactoring it. So you start typing, it already sort of gives you the full refactor of that function, what you only need to tap and then read the code if it is really correct, and then you have your refactored function. So that's really nice. So over a year you see it improving. It gets better and better every time. It knows more about probably Servoy and about the contents of the workspace, but also you see it improving over time.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see what Copilot does well, what the Servoy AI does well, and also just what the Servoy like build engine does for you in terms of code completion, and they're all really different. Like the Copilot really is looking at your workspace, and so the larger your workspace is, the more code you have in there, the more it can anticipate what you need.
Because if you have an empty workspace and you start using Copilot, then the function what else is like, it doesn't really help. It doesn't really know application dot output and all the other things, because it doesn't have any references. So it sees that the extension is an .js file, so probably it is then console.log or something like that.
Yeah, and then the Servoy built-in code completion is really deterministic. It really knows everything about your code, but also the Servoy APIs. So it doesn't hallucinate things. So what I think is interesting is as the Copilot gets better, that we can somehow merge the two of them to where it doesn't make mistakes about Servoy API. Like the other day, I saw it invented a database manager function that didn't exist. It sounds good.
You can do this one. If you do database manager dot, and then you get save data is incorrect. But if you do a data source, what was it? And then data sources dot, you see already things what doesn't exist, because it doesn't know. It starts creating things what is not there. But that's what it does.
It's the creative side. Yeah. So I think what's interesting is going forward, what we're doing in the Servoy AI plugin is really sending information about like constraints about what we know about Servoy.
But also about about the selected thing. So the Servoy AI, the AI also uses the parser what we already have. So that gives you back like, hey, the function call, what you do. So if you go to an external function call or to a plugin, it knows context about the plugins and all the other things. So that helps respond, give the correct response in the Servoy, this AI part.
I have 2 more questions that came in. Is it possible to add information about preferred naming conventions so that you can tell it what naming conventions it should use?
Currently in Copilot, you cannot prompt it at all in the current plugin version. Maybe in the next Copilot own plugin version, maybe they have it, because in some other in Station Studio Code, they already, in that plugin, it is already added that you can do that. In the Eclipse version, it's not there yet. So yeah, if you can prompt it and tell it more about what it should do, then yeah, probably you can do it. But currently, it is not really supported.
I think the point should be that the AI understands what your naming convention in your project is, and then use that as well. If your project's big enough, it should be able to learn from that.
Yeah, but if you type it, then it sort of knows, because it gets a lot of references to other variants.
Yeah. The other question was, can we train some AI model on Servoy specifics like DBI files or the FRM files? I'm not sure if that's really applicable for AI.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't use the word train. Training a model is best left to the experts.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get too into the weeds or the details, but we already do things like that in the Servoy AI plugin, because we can send a lot of things in the prompt. So you can really constrain the kind of response you're going to get back. For example, we do that on Servoy Cloud when we show you how you can optimize query performance. We send in the prompt a lot of things about the schema and existing indexes and that sort of thing. So it doesn't tell you to make an index you already have, for example. So right now, what we're doing with Servoy AI is just related to JavaScript code, but it can be that we expand that into the other parts of an application are also just JSON or JavaScript. So that's easy to imagine.
Okay. I hope this answers the questions. I think for the sake of time, we should move on to the next.
Yeah. This was just meant to be a little teaser.
Maybe René can show one more time where to find the installation, just in case someone missed it.
So help Eclipse Marketplace, and then search here for Copilot. And then you should use the currently the Copilot for Eclipse, and then if this one probably hits the 1.0 version something, then probably that one gets better. But for now, this one can do a lot more.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Now I'll stop sharing.
Thanks for that, René. We'll switch back to the slide deck. Can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna jump into some more demos. Up next is the Event Manager API. So in this release, we introduce kind of a brand new way to handle events. And I have a couple of demos to demonstrate this. I would say that this is kind of a medium to advanced use case. So this is really like a developer feature for maybe more complex applications, but I'll explain it this way before we get started, that Servoy has always in the past made it very simple in terms of handling events. You get one event like a form event on record selection or something, and you bind one handler, one method to handle that, which is very simple to declare and then to write the code. But it may be that you want to have multiple event handlers for a single event, and that you sort of want to watch things and know if their status changes or something. So this demo is sort of how to take event handling to another level to really deal with kind of complex applications and to have a better design for encapsulation. So what I'll do is first switch over in my browser to a little sample application. And I try to make examples that are as simple as possible. So the first one that I want to do, so I got to move all this Zoom stuff out of the way. You can't see. The first one that I want to do is you have a simple form like this. This is actually 3 separate forms in containers. And when I do a data change on a field in one form, I want my save and cancel button to become enabled if there's a data change. So for example, I come in here, I type Paris on the city, and you can see that, now I've already broken my demos. Okay, let me, I had left this open. Let me relaunch this. It was sitting open for a while, so probably I got disconnected. So let's try this again. Can you see it again?
Yep, still good.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so now you can see save and cancel got enabled, right? So, and then if I cancel, they become disabled, right? And that could be on any of these. So I could change the product quantity again, tab off, they become enabled again, and then, you know, I can save it. So on the UI, that's not very impressive. People do these things already. There's already ways to do this. But if you think about, I'll switch over to developer. Can you guys see Servoy developer?
Yep.
And if I come into that form, which is my orders form. So what you see here is I have these 1, 2, 3 containers. They have fields in them. The user can do stuff. And then I have this save button. Now, normally the way you would code this is you would do something like you'd handle the on element data change in each one of these forms. And maybe you would call forms.orders.elements.save button enabled, whatever, right? So you're really breaking encapsulation. You're making these inner forms have to know about some context, and they could be shown in multiple containers you don't really know, and you want to be able to design really modular and encapsulated. And in order to really make that sort of little small UX pattern happen, you have to break encapsulation some way, or maybe you put some public method on each one of these, and then you kind of call it from the outside. You come up with a more complex workaround. But now what we can do is if we can add an event listener and have the outer form observe the inner forms and be notified when their state changes. That's the whole idea here. And so let's take a look at how this works. On show of my outer form, I'm going to use the new Events Manager API. So you can see it here. And basically, I'm going to register the outer form as a listener on those inner forms. So I'll show a bit of the code complete here. If you look at events, you get the Events Manager, the JS Events Manager API. That's a brand new class. And then you can do things like add event listeners, remove event listeners, and fire event listeners. So on show, you want to subscribe or register your listeners. And then also on hide, I remove the listeners because I don't really want to react to changes in those forms. Maybe they're showing in another form, in another container. And then when they're not inside this form, I don't want to be notified of those state changes because it doesn't make any sense in that context. So typically you want to add listeners for the duration that it's valid and then remove them. So on show and on hide are good places to do that if you're doing form related stuff. So then what I'm doing with adding a listener is you provide a few bits of information. Again, I'll bring up that code complete and show you what that looks like. So there are 3 arguments here: the type of the event, callback, the method that's going to be invoked when the event is triggered, and that the context is like the object that you're watching. And that can kind of be any, it could be another form or a string. And what that allows you to do is limit the event broadcast to that event type for this object. I don't want to watch every form in my solution for the on element data change. I just want to watch these particular forms. So if you look at what I've done here, I'm using a built-in event type on element data change my method in this form, I call update UI. And then the context here is those three forms. I'm only interested in those. I don't want to get my callback triggered for everything, right? If we look at the event types, there are several or many built-in event types. Right now, we've just added everything for the form events, but we think we can expand this to include many different kinds of, there's lots of different event types in the Servoy application. So, but we started with forms to keep it simple for the first iteration. So you can see that I can handle any, observe any event that's on a form. So I'm watching these three forms to see if those events happen. Now, I don't actually have to handle those events on those inner forms or write any code in those inner forms. It's just, as soon as that happens, it bubbles out to the listeners. If we look at what I'm doing in the update UI, it's a bit less interesting because it's just checking to see if there's any edited records or maybe failed records, and then it's enabling or disabling those buttons. But the idea is I get to disconnect the data change from the update in the UI, get those completely kind of asynchronous and decoupled. So I'm not doing any cross-form scripting. It's really, I think, important that to have a clean code base, you don't have forms.myform. And then you start meddling inside the inner state of each form. You want to maintain that nice encapsulation, makes your code base really perform well and easy to maintain. So that's the simple example. I'll go on to the next small demo I have here, which is having to do with custom events. So let me switch back to my browser. Can you see my browser, Victor?
Yep.
Okay, so a nice use case here for a custom event. Well, I asked my colleagues for their use cases. I got a lot of different answers. I wanted to do something that was simple, but also kind of shows the power. So the one we came up with was like a validation example. And there is already a whole event model for validation at the entity level. I sort of want to forget about that for the moment and just focus on what's happening in the UI. So maybe this isn't in the end the best practice, but just to illustrate the point. So I'll do the demo first, then I'll walk through how it happens. So we have, let's say, a couple arbitrary business rules. One, that the ship date can't be before the order date because that wouldn't make any sense, right? So if I change the ship date and make it earlier than the order date, I should get a validation of that when I try to save. The other might be that we don't want to do orders over $1,000 without a credit check on the customer or something. Okay. So I'll just come in here and change the year. I'll make it 1988, which is way before the order date. And then when I come here to save, you can see some validation on the field, and I get the notification up here that save failed, right? I can cancel that and it goes away. Suppose that I put in 100 units of this product. Now you can see my order totals going over 1,000 again. I try to save, I get a highlight, and I get a tooltip with a message. I could do both. I didn't show also the tooltip on this one. So now they're both marked, and if I mouse over here, ship date cannot be before order date. Okay, that's a nice little sample. Already you could do this. It's not like you couldn't do this before. In fact, 4 years ago, we introduced the onValidate event at the entity level, and I think I did a webinar almost with the same use case. But doing it in the UI was a little more complicated then because it was handling the entity event and there was more code to write. So go back and watch, I think, 2020, one of the update webinars in 2020, I forget which one has that example if you want to look at entity level validation. But here, let's just jump back to the IDE and look at how we do this in the UI. Victor, can you see Servoy Developer?
Yep, it's still working.
Okay, good. So let's let's look at these custom event types first, okay? So if I highlight my active solution, you will see a new solution property called event types. And this is where you can add in your own custom event types. It's a little bit bigger. So here you can see you just put two properties, the name of the event and the description, right? So you put in my custom event, and now you can trigger your event type and you can watch for your event type. That's all it is. And so what I've done is put in a number of things that can happen during the save and validation process. And they sort of go in order: before save, on save, or really that's after, right? And then I want to know if a save failed, or if a save was reverted, like a cancel, right? So this is on save successful, I guess. On save failed and reverted. These other two, I was playing with something and made that, but I'm not using them in this demo. So first, step one is define what events can happen in your solution. And I should point out that if you do modular development, so if you have a complex solution, a lot of modules, it's really nice for a module to be able to declare, hey, these are the events that can happen inside my module. And then when you bring them into a larger solution, you can sort of observe what's happening within module. That's one way to also clean up your code base. After you've declared your event types, you can go ahead and register listeners on them and handle them. So let's take a look at, I've done this using form inheritance, so it gets a little bit tricky, but I think you'll see why it's nice to do that way. I made a base data form, and those three little forms I was showing that are inside the main orders form are all inheriting the functionality from the base data form. And if you look at the base data form on show event, you can see that again, on show, I'm registering for those custom event types that I made. And what I did is I wrote in the base form a handler for each one. So on before save, on save failed, on save reverted. The context in this case is this form's found set. So when I inherit from this form, it'll work on behalf of different forms, right? So again, that context is maybe a little confusing, but it's sort of the thing that is bubbling the event that you're interested in. So when I inherit from this form, like as I do in my ship info form, I'm only interested in, you know, the orders found set. In this case, they're all sharing the same found set. So it's not a very complicated example. So if I look now at my ship info form, on show is overridden. Let me do it this way. If I look at it this way, you can see in the methods of the form here, which ones are overridden, which ones are not. So you can see that I've overridden on save and on before save and on save reverted. So let's first look at on before save, because that's the order we go in. So this is now inside the ship info form. So the base form sort of sets up the structure of how things are going to work timing wise. And then the sub form or the child form does the actual implementation. So before save happens, I want to do that ship date, order date validation thing. This clear markers thing just removes the decorations on the field. And I do that beforehand in case I'm revalidating and revalidating, right? So then I do the little bit of business logic here, and I say, oh, okay, if ship date is less than order date, I want to put in the tooltip text and that little style class decorator. Important, I return false, because events can have a what we call an aggregate return type, and I'll get into that. Because if, remember, this is now multiple listeners, and I want to let all the listeners know, hey, I'm about to save. And if one of them returns false, you want it to all return false and sort of discontinue the save. So that's how I've set up this sort of flow here. So if the ship date and order date thing works out, then I return true. And that's all the logic that I have to put in the ship info form. I don't have to deal with, hey, when am I saving? And do I have to revert edits or revert changes or anything like that? That could be handled in another area like the outer form. Quickly, I'll show you what the clear markers code does. It just removes the style class and reverts the tooltip text. So that's all that does. But you can see that I also call that when the save is successful, you want those validation decorations to go away. Or if you click cancel, you'll also want them to go away. So here I'm sort of handling save, cancel, and save failed. Or actually, I don't handle save failed in this case. I do it before save. And I do the same on the order details form. You can see that on before save. I've also implemented it. It's the same recipe. It's just that here I check if the order totals over 1,000. Again, a tooltip text and a little decorator. Important that I return false if I want to block that event, or I want to let the observer know that the event was sort of rejected or blocked. So that's how you handle the response to the event. So it's maybe a little confusing because in the first example, the outer form was watching the inner form. And in this example, the inner form is sort of watching this global event. Don't think of it more like, it's not really watching the outer form. It's just saying, hey, notify me if there's an on before save event for my found set, the one that I'm interested in. And you only have to handle those events. And that was that context argument. So let's go to how the event gets fired. Let's go back to our orders form. And if we look at the on action save method, so this is the handler for that button click, right? That before we even start the save, I want to fire the event. Hey, I'm about to save. So we send out the event to notify any observers and let them check the save, right? Let them do the validation. So again, maybe I do this also in a base form, and then I don't really know or care what the inner forms are doing. I just let them handle it on their own. Really nice way to do encapsulation and keep the code base clean and decoupled. The big difference between the built-in event types and the custom event types is that you have this fire event listeners. You don't have to fire built-in event types. Those happen automatically, like on data change, on record selection. Those are fired from the UI. And if we add more event types, they'll be fired from maybe entity events or something. But in this case, it's your custom event, so it's up to you to say when it starts to bubble. And here it's when you click the save button. So all I'm doing here is calling the fire event listener. I'll give you the code complete so you can see the method signatures. So events manager, fire, and it's the same three arguments, the type of event. So in the context, so it would be like this form's found set again. And then the callback arguments. I didn't really show this, but if you may want extra information going into your handlers. And if you put those in as an array, they'll be attached to the event data object. And so you just do events.data and you get some extra callback arguments. Maybe you want to pass in something about the state going in. I don't have a real good example for that, but if you look at the docs and you look at the reference doc, you see how to handle the arguments. There is a fourth argument, the return value aggregate type. And this is maybe a little bit of advanced, so don't be too worried if it doesn't make sense. It's typically the return value is going to be nothing, or it's going to be Boolean to know if any of the listeners kind of block the event. They don't really block the event, but they sort of let you know that they want to block what's going to happen next. It could be that they're returning some other information, and then maybe you do some notification and you want everyone to report back their state. Like then you just put that the return value aggregate type there's a constant for that. I'll show you that. I think it's this one, events aggregation type, and then you do value array. And you just let it know, like, instead of getting Boolean back, I'm going to get an array of objects back. Again, that's for like an advanced use case, really like you're kind of building your own framework for some asynchronous thing and you want to get states back from different listeners. So don't be too worried if you don't have to specify that unless you're doing that use case. The default is Boolean. And if they don't return anything, then you probably aren't going to check what it is anyway. So after you fire the events, all the listeners have a chance to respond to that. You actually get back a value. In this case, I want to know if any of the listeners are trying to block the save, right? So if any one of those listeners return false, you'll get back kind of a logical and, right? So you get back false if one of them is false. And I store that here in a variable continue save, and then I evaluate it. So basically, if any of the listeners block the save, this would be false, and I would go down here and do that little error toaster message that you saw when one of the validators or both of the validators blocked it. Otherwise, you just go ahead with your safe logic. And then I fire another event. And this is important because that second event, remember my listeners picked that one up and used it to clear their validation decorations on the fields. So from the side of the object that fires the event, there's not too much extra you need to do, but you just stick in those event notifications wherever it's happening in the code flow. And in this case, you can really avoid saying, hey, right here, I have to go forms dot, ship info dot ship date, blah, 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 right? You don't have to do that and totally scramble your encapsulation and make a mess. You can keep it nice and clean by doing it this way. So I hope that makes sense. Just to switch back to the browser and the slideshow. That's probably the biggest demo. We'll go fast through the other ones, but you can see that there's really two types. There's the built-in form events, there's the custom events, then there's the events manager class itself, which has the API to add and remove listeners, and also fire the events for custom events. Remember that built-in events are automatically fired for you. And there's really those three arguments, both in the listener registration and in the event firing that you want to do, the context or the target or source of the event, and then those callback args. And then if you get into it, those aggregate return values. We introduced this in this version as a starter, and we included all the form events in terms of what's coming in the future. We think that there's lots of different kinds of events in Servoy, and we could potentially expose all of them, right? Because we just can add the firing in there. I think like an interesting use case would be on data broadcast. You see a lot of times people want to maybe update something on some form if there's a data broadcast. It used to be that you'd have to handle that in some scope, and then you kind of drill in and say forms.mylittle-form. If this, then show a little pop-up, if it was the same fount set, but maybe it's a totally different data source, and you write a bunch of code. Now you could just say, hey, I'm interested in a data broadcast for this data source, and if it's not that, then I won't get triggered, and you keep it nice and clean. So, and then I think some of the frameworks and samples that we've done in the past can be really updated nicely. Think of like navigation, or we had some CRUD frameworks, and the one example solution could all be updated nicely to show this way of doing it and clean up the code. Okay. Next demo.
We've got two questions before you continue.
Yes, please.
Easy one and a hard one. The easy one is this a replacement for the Servoy Event Manager module from Servoy Utils?
I would say so. Yeah. Yeah, that whole thing was written to get around this idea that there's tight coupling between the event source and the event handler in Servoy. That whole thing was written to get around that, and now it's put into the core, so you don't really need that module anymore.
And will an example, the one that you showed us, maybe become available for downloading? So
yeah, I can post the slides and the sample solution on the forum after the webinar.
Yep,
So we'll put out the recording and slides in the sample.
Try it out. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, it's maybe not the real best practice. It just sort of shows it, because I would still use the on validate at the entity level, and then separate UI and business logic, and maybe put the rules in the entity, and pick up the record markers and all that. But if you combine both of those, then you get a real nice solution.
Okay, and please do note the time before everyone leaves. We can get through the demos.
Okay, yeah, we got time. That's the biggest. That was the big, hairy, scary one. The other ones are all just kind of updates. and little mini demos. So the next thing is the menu editor. In the 24.12 update, we introduced the Servoy built-in menu, so that you could declare menus at design time, so you don't have to write them in code, and then you can bind them to components. So we're continuing on that path, and we introduced a new editor in Servoy Developer, and it shows the exposed component properties that you can also manipulate. And we also added menu support at the data grid column level, so you can have little built-in drop-down menus on the columns as well, and you can also declare that at design time, and then with the ng grid properties. So I'll just sort of show where that is and show a couple use cases. It's definitely a simpler example. Going back to, well, let me stay in the browser before I go to the IDE. Man, all my Zoom stuff is totally in the way. Sorry. Okay. Okay, we're looking at the solution now. I switch over to the products table that I made, and I'll show this, and then I'll go into the menu editor and show you how I did this. So in addition to the editor in the IDE, we added support for putting little extra menus. So normally you get the group by, if you enable it, you get the group by and some other ones, the show hide in the column headers. But now we can also have custom things. So suppose I, for discontinued products, right? Let's say I just want to not see those. I can say, well, let's filter those out, or maybe I want to bring them back. Right, so I do some little custom menu item there, or say on the units in stock, all of these that are in red, you can see that they are below the reorder level. So if it goes below the reorder level, I highlight that it's red, and then maybe I want to do a bulk reorder. So I say, okay, bulk reorder, and then it tells you the following products, all the ones that are highlighted there, will be reordered. I just made up something, and then if I hit continue, you can see that they go, I ordered 10 more than the reorder level. So from 40 to 30, that sort of thing. So, and then the decoration goes away on that. So just some random one. I did another one on unit prices. It's suppose I want to see this is in US dollars. I want to see euros, but I had a little bug, but I'll show it to you anyway. So I switched to euros. Then I was trying to get it to refresh, but if I kind of switch screens, then it comes up. And I actually changed the value. I switched the data provider. I think that's what's breaking it. I switched the data provider, which has the conversion built in. So now it's showing that $18 as 16.38 euros. So maybe you have some logic that you want that's specific to a column, right, in a grid. The other thing that I was thinking is you could take the SVY pop-up filter extension and just sort of do it right here in line on the grid column and just show that up. Would be another use case. All right, let's switch to the IDE and take you through it. Let's see. Can you see the IDE, Victor?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so let's start with the menu editor first. You will see this was introduced in the last release, this menus node on the solution level. So you can declare menus, and it used to be that you would create a new menu, and then over here you would get the properties, or you would right click and create menu item, and it's kind of a cumbersome way to do it, and rather than having a nice editor to work with. So now if you double click this, no, sorry, you can double click one of the items, but yeah, that opens it. Or you can right click and say edit menu. So this is an actual editor now, and I can add menu items this way. You can also add sub items. You can do kind of infinite nesting on your menus. And then so for each one of these, you just specify the properties. So it's not, the editor itself is not adding any new functionality. It's just making it a little bit easier to manage the properties for given menus and menu items. So you put in like the name and the text that you see, and the font icon style and tooltip text and all that. And then the component-specific properties are exposed by the component. So if you include the component library in your solution, then you'll see those properties there. And you can see that there are data grid properties. And basically that it has the hide for column IDs or the show for column IDs on the data grid property, or if you want to make it a separator. If you don't put anything for hide and you put one for show, it'll only show for those that you specify. And then it's the inverse of it if you do it for hide. So if you just put it hide and nothing for show, it will show for all of them except for the ones that you don't want to show. So by default, it would show for all of them if you did nothing. So it's sort of like an exclusive or on whether you're hiding the ones you list or showing everything, you know, or hiding everything but showing the ones you list, if you know what I mean. The data grid properties is how I got those to show up in the column headers there. But this whole editor works for any menu. So even the navigation menu that I'm using just for the example has these the orders in the, you know, this is with a side nav, just saying what form to show. This was, I would go back and watch the last update webinar to get a full update on the menu, the built-in menu type. This is just following up on that with the editor that's built in and the ability to attach menu items to column headers in the data grids. Any questions about this one? Hope it's pretty straightforward.
I see nothing so far yet.
All right, we have 8 minutes to get through the rest of the release notes. I think maybe one other, not demo, but I'll just show you where things are. So back to our browser and on our slides. So we saw the menu editor. I'll skip the overview. I think it's pretty new. I'll share these slides. We introduced a dynamic OAuth provider. So if you're using the built-in OAuth, not the Servoy Cloud configured one, but one that just goes directly to an OAuth provider to do authentication when the solution starts. We had the built-in ones that you could just configure, like say it's Google or it's Gitbook or sorry, GitHub or something. Now you can do it dynamically. And the use case for this that I can think of is really that you have a multi-tenant application and you have one customer who wants to authenticate through Azure AD and the other one wants to use Google for theirs or something, or they want to have both. And the way this works is you just dynamically switch the provider at startup. So you programmatically show the authentication source. I'll just show you where this is in the IDE. It's not really a demo because maybe it's not relevant only for the people that are interested in OAuth providers. So it's on the solution level. Authenticator is an existing property. OAuth was the existing one because you could, with that one, you could just choose the, sorry, it wants me to save that. There, you could just kind of just put in all of the OAuth properties, right? And then you're done. But suppose I want to do more than one depending on some context. That's why we introduced OAuth Authenticator, which I think is a mouthful. And the way this works is you have to have an authentication module included. I already cheated and put one in here before the solution started or before the webinar started. And then you can create the method. I created the method, so we just jump into that. That's down here in my modules. Way down here. And there's my OAuth module, and inside that I have that scope and I have that auth method. When you create it, it'll generate this stub for you. So here you could put in some logic and say, hey, if it's tenant A, maybe you recognize it by a domain or IP address or something. If it's tenant A, you do this. If it's tenant B, you do that. Whatever you want, you can dynamically return. But you just return this object that has the same parameters that you configure static, but now it's dynamic. So I just want to show where that is. That's for those of you using OAuth for authentication. Any questions on that? And we go back to the browser. The other one, JS-based found set. This is really just to unify the behavior of all the different found set types with a common base class. It's more of a programmer thing. And it really is maybe an advanced use case if you're writing some code that accepts a generic found set and you do something to it and you don't care if it's comes from a SQL found set or in mem found set or something, then it just sort of shows all the common functionality of those. So you can program with sort of an abstract interface. So it's more for like interface style programming. Quickly, I'll show you where it is. Just the API, database manager. And there you have now JS base found set. And so these are the sort of the common properties. There's also base record that comes with it. So you can see that, base found set is a subset of, what's in SQL found set or regular JS found set. But these will be valid on all found set types, if that makes sense. Okay, I wanted to make a demo for this, but I knew it wouldn't fit. And I think that if you go back and watch the previous update webinar, I think you basically get the gist of it anyway. We introduced an event called on before record selection, but we introduced it at the entity level. It allows you to handle a record selection event before it happens. And again, you can return false to block it. Now we made that available on the form. So if you look at your form events, you'll see this one there and you can handle it and do some logic. And if you don't want the record selection to change, you can return false and it will block. It's the same as the entity event in the example we showed before, but it's on the form. And now that we also have the event broadcasting and listening capability, it is of course supported with the form events. So you could watch, some other forms on record selection on before record selection event and handle that. Okay. Wow. How much time do we have? We're getting close. That's okay. These are more like the release notes things. But we're always improving our support for modern versions of JavaScript. We came out of ECMA 5 and to 6 and beyond. And this release actually has a significant performance improvement. We had some customers share with us their really big solutions. And they said they were having performance problems in developer, not at runtime. We used their solutions to kind of study and make improvements. So we made some pretty big improvements for, solutions having lots of circular dependencies and that sort of thing. If you have a big complicated solution, hopefully you see a performance boost in the code editor and code complete and all of that. And if not, send us your solution and we'll take a look at it because we think that it's important to have a really high performing developer environment. We introduced a new big int data type. I'll get to that in a second. And we added support for the Promise API for doing async stuff. It's kind of internally supported. It's not really meant for developers to use. And we're adding more code complete templates every release. So now we have 4 of, and we have that for JS found set and JS dataset. So you can try that out. You just do 4 and control space and you'll get the code complete for those to use 4 of, which is a more modern JavaScript style. We'll just continue to make improvements to the parser and the IDE performance. We'll continue to add support for ECMA stuff. I think coming up, we'll support default parameters, computed properties, which is kind of a weird way to substitute in properties into an object. But yeah, maybe you have a use case for that. Anyway, it's in the spec, so we'll include it. And then following up on the big int data type, we should add support for big number. And in the very next release, we do a big upgrade of Rhino, which is the built-in JavaScript engine, and we get a lot of goodies, I think, by default with that. So if you look at the 1.8 release notes for Rhino, you can see what's coming. The big int data type is for really big
integer. One question. Those ECMA improvements, can we find somewhere what exactly the improvements are? Which things are now supported?
If you check the release notes, it's in there.
Okay, exactly everything that is now supported is in the release notes.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I'm going through it now, like the big int data type. Yeah, the 4 of templating. I mean, some of it is not really, we don't really document what JavaScript is supported and what's not, I guess. But we do document when we add support for something. So you have to pick it up in the release notes. docs.servoy.com. Big int data type. This is if you have a big int data type on your database, then you're using large integers. And previously in the application level, you can have a problem with the actual data accuracy, like if you add 1 to a large number. So first we add big int support in the code editor. And that includes a big int class. So you can do like big int and then create a primitive data type as well from that. So if you do big int dot, you'll get code complete. So we add support for it at the code level in the JavaScript level. And then going forward, we'll add sort of the full stack approach. So you can have a big int column in a database. Actually, you can bind a big int UI, field to that. And so support for input, output in the UI, and then also in code. So kind of from database to UI and code and back will be fully supported. Probably not most people care, but if you are using very large numbers in your database, maybe you have some precision scientific measurements or something, then this helps. We also add support for promise. Promises are the asynchronous way to do things in JavaScript. It does not really make sense for you to use promises yourself because the client itself is single-threaded, and we intend to keep it that way. But for things that happen asynchronously, you can actually queue those up into a promise and then get back the results as an array. So it kind of takes a bunch of asynchronous things and makes it feel synchronous or synchronized, and then you can get the results. So the use case we did is we made the HTTP plugin run on promises. So here you can see that you can execute an array of HTTP requests, and then there that .catch error or that .then with gives you the function that is going to handle the result, and you get back in that function the array of responses. So rather than firing off a bunch of HTTP requests and handling the callbacks and then kind of lining them up again, you can say, hey, I want these back in the same order when everything's done, when the last one finishes, and then it's all synchronized. So as a developer, that's less code, but it's also kind of like way simpler. So we're doing that internally. It's not like you should go out and write your own promises. That would make no sense. So maybe we add this to the raw SQL plugin. If you have other asynchronous APIs that you use, I can't think of any offhand, we can add support for those as well. I wanted to spend a lot of time on Servoy Cloud, but we're over.
We have to save it for the next one, maybe. We
can save it for the next one, yeah. Sorry to the cloud team, because they really put a lot of effort into every release, and they have some good slides for this. But just I'll just take you through this, and then we'll go to the Q&A at the end. We started auto scheduling automated builds on the pipelines for versions that are unsupported, right? So if you're running an unsupported version, it will automatically build on the supported version for you. For dev environments, we start warning you with emails, and then at the time it will actually try to build it. And then for production, the lead time is a lot longer. We send more emails, but the idea is that if you run in Servoy Cloud, you really need to be on a supported version. The whole point is that we have an ISO certified, very secure and compliant environment, which means all of the dependencies we keep up to date every single release, and in between releases, we're constantly patching and updating, and Servoy applications should be no exception. And that's the idea behind that. We're also now showing, I should at least show the screenshot for this one because it's good. The call stack for the application performance review, which you could get in the monitoring. Now we actually show the detailed called stack, so you can go in and look at precisely what's happening in the call stack for things that may be performing badly. We keep that for 7 days. So if you're already using the application monitoring, this is an enhancement to that. And I think that's a nice addition. We also, maybe the last thing to add is that we're adding support for remote database access. So people more and more are saying, hey, I want to remotely connect to our database, which we can't say we really recommend doing that, especially for production databases. And that's what we're supporting now, only as production databases. But there are some where they have other applications that need to talk to or whatever. So it's your data, you get to decide. But we have two levels, read only and read write. And then there's rules you can apply for like IP address filters and of course passwords. So you can actually in the Cloud Control Center UI request this. It's handled as a ticket by our team, and then we open it up for you. You have to be an admin to even be able to see this and request it. So that's one other thing. A lot of patching and updates. It's all in the release notes. If you look at it. So check out the release notes for the things we couldn't get to. Finally, just a bit about what's going on. A reminder that legacy client support will end in 2026. 2024 LTS is the last version that maintains support for Smart Web and NG1. So if you're not on those, you want to start maybe thinking about this. If you feel behind, reach out to us. We've been helping a lot of customers with the updates. It may be not as bad as you think. So at least let us take a look at it. And finally, going forward, we're going to continue improving performance in developer. We're still looking at how to use more AI with developer productivity. And Servoy Cloud, we're going to continue to improve application analytics, which is on its way. That's a new feature that we haven't released yet. It's in the labs. Continue to enhance monitoring. And we're going to continue to bring the satellite environments up to feature parity with the hosted option. Okay, I'll take a deep breath. Victor, take me through any questions if we have time.
Yeah, no more questions. We answered some in the chat. I hope that helped. If you still have any questions, send any of us or your contact an email. We will always answer them. I think it speaks for productivity of our team, the R&D team and the cloud team, that we cannot get through all the content in 1 hour anymore. They did a great job. I think you did a great job talking really fast, Sean. Also, Renee did a good job talking fast and showing us the Servo AI. Is there anything you still want to mention or add, Sean?
No, thank you for attending. We will share the recording slides, and there was a request for the sample solution, and that's no problem, of course. Put it on the forum.
Okay, everyone, please check it out if you're interested in an event manager. And we'll see everyone in the next webinar. Have a nice day.
Bye for now.
Thanks all.